well as Malcolm X. When I was a student in Chicago, I did an urban ministry training. Part of it was being trained as a community organizer for Asian American community. I guess I was one of the earliest Asian American communities. And the place where I was trained was the People's Church, where the young lords had their survival program. And fate has it, or God's providence has it, 40 plus years later, I'm serving a church known as People's Church here in East Harlem. Once again, welcome all of you to this very meaningful gathering. May God bless you as you honor and celebrate life and transformative work of a very important person. And just for safety issues, there's an emergency egress exit right here to your right, or the way you came in. The bathrooms are over there, and they're gender neutral. Again, welcome, and let's celebrate this very important life together. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thanks everybody for being here today. Today's a very special day for East Harlem, for the legacy of the Young Lords is big in this community. The impact that this group has left behind, the legacy, the vision, So today, in honoring José Jiménez, Chairman José Jiménez, we will be playing a documentary that was released a couple of months ago, and it goes over his life and the journeys of the Chicago Young Lords. And like I said, this is where it began from. So to understand, without Cha-Cha and the legacy of Chicago, there would be no legacy here in Chicago. So without further ado, let's get started. I might have a little technical difficulties, but we'll get through it.
José Jiménez. The Young Lords of Lincoln Park. Next on Chicago Stories.
Support for Chicago Stories is provided by the Nagoni Foundation. Major support is provided by Glenn Cohen and the Tawani Foundation.
On May 15th, 1969, a group of teenage street members broke into trouble in Chicago's Lincoln Park neighborhood. Lincoln Park today is a high-class bastion of wealth, luxury, luxury and privilege. One of the most affluent neighborhoods in Illinois.
The streets are lined with, multi-million-dollar homes, lots of fancy shops and boutiques.
But it wasn't always that way. In the 1940s and early 1950s, Lincoln Park was home to a diverse population of poor people, mainly ethnic whites. Then, Puerto Ricans started arriving.
There was widespread poverty and unemployment in Puerto Rico, and many people were coming to the mainland to look for work. We're talking about a third of the people of the island.
Before 1946, there were fewer than 500 Puerto Ricans living in Chicago. Over the next decade, that number would jump to more than 30,000. David Rivera arrived at age 5.
My family moved into Chicago because I remember as a little tiny kid looking at this big car and looking at all the big buildings as we drove to where we were going.
The Riveras landed in an apartment building on Main Street in Lincoln Park. And young David quickly found a friend who lived upstairs, named José Cha-Cha Jiménez.
We just became friends one night, 2 kids. Cha-Cha and I hit it off right away. We were kids, we used to get together in the back alleys and play all kinds of games.
Rivera couldn't have known that within a few years, his friend Cha-Cha Jiménez would rise up to become a revolutionary leader. In this 2012 interview, Cha-Cha remembers the Lincoln Park of his childhood.
The Lincoln Park was an ethnic community. It was a very segregated community. Most people were Italian people, German people, Gypsies, hillbillies, and Puerto Ricans. And so we were the new kids on the block at that time.
Lincoln Park is a place where they're introduced to what it means to be American, and they themselves are engaging in that process.
We used to play war a lot. Our heroes were the TV shows, Davy Crockett.
Though influenced by mainstream American culture, the boys were surrounded by a growing number of Puerto Ricans who were establishing a sense of their homeland in Lincoln Park. But it hadn't been easy. When Puerto Ricans first arrived, many settled in a near-north slum nicknamed La Clark. Cha-Cha Jiménez's family landed there when he was 4 years old.
La Clark was a Skid Row neighborhood with dilapidated buildings and dive bars. The neighborhood was poor and working class, but it was vibrant and it was home.
But they wouldn't live in La Clark for long.
The city had essentially decided that this was an eyesore because it was too close to the Gold Coast.
Mayor Richard J. Daley was promoting urban renewal, replacing slums with luxury housing. And his crown jewel was in the works. Named for the famous poet, Carl Sandburg Village was heralded by developers as a village within the city.
The Carl Sandburg Village, eventually there'll be 1,875 dwelling units in this village.
Cha-Cha Jiménez and his family are literally in the path of the wrecking ball.
The tight-knit barrio that Jimenez's called home was destroyed almost overnight.
The turns of slum and light is impressive, and the results are outstanding.
David's promotional film failed to mention the human cost. More than 900 Puerto Rican families were forced out.
I said the city welcoming anywhere I said what they were doing was to displace them and just push them to another neighborhood. So wherever we move, we came murder removal of poor people.
family moved 9 times in their first 6 years.
They would travel in families. They would find out what landlords were willing to rent to Puerto Rican families.
By the mid-50s, hundreds of Puerto Rican families had made their way north to Lincoln Park, and a vibrant enclave finally took root.
There were so many resources for Puerto Ricans in Lincoln Park. Everybody had a sense that, yes, this was where the Puerto Rican community could very well thrive. Puerto Ricans would have been playing mambo. They would have flown the Puerto Rican flag.
If you walked into my mother's house, you would eat Puerto Rican food. There was a man in the corner of Sheffield and Armitage, and he would make piraguas, snow cones, ice cones, just like they were like from Puerto Rico.
There's a broader process of coming to Lincoln Park, being transformed by the kinds of diversity in the neighborhood, and then also contributing to that in terms of the cooking, the food, the music. Puerto Ricans are recreating a sense of home here in the frigid Midwest.
They were committed to culture. They were creating the social fabric that allowed them to live their lives as Puerto Ricans within the diaspora.
Like many of his peers, Jiménez was raised by a devout Catholic mother. His daughter says this upbringing influenced his future dreams.
He was in Catholic school, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and wanted to be a priest. He helped his mother set up the rosary every night.
He really thought that his destiny was to be a priest. And on the other hand, you had these pressures of the neighborhood.
Some white residents who inhabited the area looked down on their new neighbors. And Puerto Ricans found themselves targets of racial hostility by established white gangs. Although they were U.S. citizens, many viewed them as unwelcome outsiders.
There was an enormous amount of resentment against their presence.
We were made fun of from the kids because my mother would fix our hair different. We did not know how to speak English.
We were quote-unquote spics, and that's what they called us back then.
Well, we've got a lot of undesirables, troublemaking people here, that I think in time we'll move on.
In this audio interview, legendary Chicago writer and broadcaster Studs Terkel captured a white Lincoln Park resident's feelings about Puerto Ricans in the neighborhood.
They're like some of the roaches that crawl out of the woodworks, you know, after you exterminate the dog. I think that'll happen.
Even Jiménez's nickname was born from a racial slight.
That's what the white ethnic gangs deridingly called him. Oh, who's this guy? Cha-cha-cha-cha-cha, the cha-cha-cha. And his peers picked up on it, and the name stuck. Cha-cha.
From an early age, Cha-Cha had no qualms about fighting back when he got picked on.
I think being from the street, always fighting for your spot, and watching it constantly being taken from you, it develops that fight.
You're meeting with folks who see you as the problem, who see Puerto Ricans as responsible for the decay of the neighborhood. And so they're being targeted in many ways, and these kids have to grow up in a way defending themselves.
We can pick up on the school, other white gangs. Sometimes we would even hide sticks and rocks along the way home in case we got chased. It was rough.
And so we saw a need to begin our own gang for protection.
Around 11 years old, Jiménez and several friends banded together to form a gang. But in those days, it was more of a social club. They called themselves the Young Lords.
We not only rebels, we actually played sports. We played baseball and softball and things like that with other clubs. The young ones were only 12, 13, 14 years old.
They emerged in 1959, really as a force to solidify the space for Puerto Ricans in Lincoln Park, where you could go, where you couldn't go. This is is where we belong.
Soon, the young lords would see their own lives mirrored on the silver screen. In October of 1961, the Hollywood smash hit West Side Story debuted in theaters across the country.
West Side Story captures the battles between a Puerto Rican and white ethnic gangs. And even though the film trafficked in Puerto Rican stereotypes, it gave them a profound sense of pride that their story was worthy of being told.
The young lords modeled themselves after their on-screen counterparts, the Sharks.
And that's where we got our black and purple coats. It made us proud. They did a good job in making all those white people look Puerto Rican.
But for the young lords, there was no Hollywood ending. The animosity and racial bias toward Puerto Ricans extended into law enforcement, who regularly targeted them for harassment and worse.
Puerto Ricans experienced humiliation and indignity at the hands of the police.
The police was always harassing young people, stopping them in the streets, frisking them, beating them up.
You know, everybody that's dark or Puerto Rican or Latino is not a criminal, and that's how we were treated.
I remember being handcuffed for sitting on the fire hydrant. They were putting laws that were in effect 100 years and never used, like spitting on the sidewalk.
By their mid-teens, the young lords were sinking deeper into gang life.
They stole cars, they got into fights, they tied walls, they did things that we associate with gang activities.
Beginning in the summer of 1963, Jiménez was in and out of jail for charges ranging from petty theft to aggravated assault.
Chacha was a little more aggressive. He didn't care if he had a knife in his hand, he would use it, you know?
While Chacha and his team acted out in the streets, many older Puerto Ricans pushed within the system for inclusion and acceptance. In 1966, their efforts finally paid off. The city's first Puerto Rican Day Parade, known as El Dia de San Juan, was held downtown on June 12th.
This was the very first time that the city was recognizing or acknowledging the Puerto Rican population in Chicago.
The Puerto Rican community made it. You know, so everybody was out celebrating.
It felt like you were wanted. To have people that look like you and talk like you, and the food and just the decorations was beautiful.
But the good feelings were short-lived. A few hours after the parade, in response to a call on a fight, Chicago police shot a 20-year-old unarmed Puerto Rican man named Chruch. And the day of celebration took a violent turn.
I remember someone coming over to where we were at saying that a Puerto Rican boy had gotten shot in the back by a cop.
When our senators were shot, it was just like a trigger that began the whole rebellion with the youth.
People started throwing rocks and bricks at the cops, driving buyers. The buyer trucks will come, they'll set buyer trucks on fire.
And that was unstoppable because I saw that sold miles out for years.
The Division Street riots marked the largest rebellion ever attributed to the Puerto Rican population.
We saw 3 days and 3 nights of people protesting, rioting, burning buildings and businesses in that neighborhood.
Many young lords took part in the uprising. The event would mark the beginnings of a dramatic transformation for the group, from thugs to agents of change. By 1968, Chacha's illegal activities had grown to include drug use. At 19 years old, he was tried as an adult and sentenced to 60 days in solitary confinement in Cook County Jail on charges of drug possession. pass the time, Cha-Cha began to read books about civil rights activists, including Malcolm X and Martin Luther King.
And those books awakened a political consciousness in him. But that was only the beginning.
I must say that while...
And then came the news on April 4th, 1968.
I was deeply saddened last evening, as all men of goodwill must have been, by the senseless slaying of Dr. Martin Luther King.
The assassination of Martin Luther King threw the city of Chicago into chaos.
The people issued a check back 1,000 rioters while firing on the way.
People are arrested and funneled into the prison.
Cha-Cha watched as the protesters, mostly poor blacks, were hauled in en masse. And groups of undocumented Mexican workers who had been rounded up in raids followed.
He sees that these migrants are being harassed and abused. They didn't speak English, and he translated for them.
Witnessing the struggle of oppressed people firsthand lit a fire in Cha-Cha.
And all those things you kind of contributed to my enlightenment. And then I started hearing on the news we had a loudspeaker with a radio on. And so I was hearing about the Black Panther Party. It was fascinating because they were to me like an army. And, they were no nothing role models. And I felt, this is what we need to do in the Puerto Rican community.
When my father left jail, he was ready for a revolution.
When Cha-Cha Jiménez returned to his Lincoln Park neighborhood, he learned his parents' rent had been doubled, and they faced the bleak prospect of losing their home yet again.
And all of a sudden, the city of Chicago decides that they need that area as prime real estate. It's 15 minutes from the little downtown.
The city had big plans for Lincoln Park, and it did not include Puerto Ricans. Mayor Richard J. Daley was, once again, promoting urban renewal, intent on evicting the poor and people of color from their neighborhood.
They just come out of jail and had seen the changes in 2 months. And then you can better see people get their possessions thrown out on the street.
That really is the story of the Puerto Rican community, the diaspora here in Chicago. Just when we start setting roots, we just get upended over and over and over again.
But this time, Puerto Ricans were not going without a fight.
But we didn't have any role models. We decided to fend for ourselves. Our people were being discriminated, but they were quiet and silent. And we had grown up here. And so we knew we had rights, and we were trying to defend our rights.
A chance meeting with neighborhood activist Pat Devine introduced Cha-Cha to community organizing.
Cha-Cha introduced himself and said, "What are you guys doing?" And I said, "We're making signs. Tomorrow night there's an important meeting. A large section of the Puerto Rican population is scheduled to be removed." I said, "I'm here to inform people about what's going on."
So here's this young white woman from Aurora, Illinois, and Cha-Cha's like, who are you telling me, about what's happening in our neighborhood? But it was a turning point.
Something clicked, and so he suddenly puts his whole life into a new context, right? A new political context.
Cha-Cha Jiménez felt compelled to action, but he knew he couldn't do it alone. And so the 19-year-old turned to his gang, the Young Lords, imploring them to cease the street fights and crime and take up the mantle of a greater cause.
He hits the local dive bar, where he knows that members of the Young Lords will be hanging out.
He started talking about what we're going to do. We're not going to fight gangs anymore. They are people like us. They're here because they're oppressed too. They're poor too.
And they laughed at him.
When they saw me, they go, "Oh, here he comes again. Here comes that crazy nut trying to talk to us." I mean, I became obsessed with trying to fight against urban renewal, but I wasn't having too much progress. In fact, half of the Young Lords quit. They didn't want anything to do with me anymore.
But Cha-Cha Jiménez wouldn't back He won over David Rivera and others, like Tony Baez.
Yeah, he was the kind of leader that inspired the people around him. Everybody looked up to Chacha.
And 20-year-old Omar Lopez.
He was soft-spoken, but very persuasive. He's like a pupil when there's an idea, and he will pursue it.
Unlike most of the other young Lobos, Lopez is Mexican.
The issues were almost like universal. If you had to talk about health, if you talked about housing, it's something that affected all Mexicans, Puerto Ricans.
In September 1968, Cha-Cha officially dissolved the Young Lords Street Gang and reestablished them as the Young Lords Organization.
What's so unique is that they were a gang that turned into a political organization. The first to do that.
Cha-Cha declared the Young Lords to be a socialist organization whose purpose was to stand up for human rights, fair housing, and an end to police brutality for all Puerto Ricans in oppressed groups, as well as self-determination for the people of Puerto Rico, an idea reflected in their new slogan.
Tengo Puerto Rico en mi corazón. I had Puerto Rico in my heart. No matter where we were at, we were Puerto Ricans. And we were going to fight for that right.
Cha-Cha was inspired by Fred Hampton, the charismatic leader of the Black Panther Party.
When we said all powers to the people, all powers of manifested in the people, we had many people who blind, we believe this should be thrown away.
Cha-Cha begins to talk about the Young Lords as the Puerto Rican counterpart of the Black Panther Party. In this process of transformation, the Young Lords do not have to reinvent the wheel.
Cha-Cha adopted the Panthers' tight organizational structure and militant style.
They needed affordable housing. They needed health care for everyone. They needed food in the bellies of babies. They needed daycare so the women could go to work. They needed to know that when they went to work and came home, they still had their home.
For a group of gang members who were mostly teenage dropouts and criminals, these seemed like lofty goals.
Cha-Cha was having problems convincing all of the membership that the way we need to go is becoming a politically active organization.
A tragic event would change their minds. On the night of May 4th, 1969, several young lords, including 22-year-old Manuel Ramos, were celebrating a birthday in Chicago's Bridgeport neighborhood on the city's south side.
Manuel Ramos was a father, he was a brother, he was a friend. As people described him, soft-spoken, just a really good guy.
There are differing narratives of what exactly happened.
There was a confrontation outside the party between Ramos and a white man. Witnesses said the man did not identify himself as off-duty Chicago police officer James Lamb.
Police Officer Lamb opens fire.
Lamb shot Ramos in the face. He was pronounced dead later that night.
It really is a painful story for a lot of people because he was beloved and they had been friends for many years.
The young lords were outraged and wanted justice. But Officer Lamb claimed he was acting in self-defense and was never charged.
I think my first reaction was, let's do something about Manuel's death. They can't get away with this.
Instead of resorting to street justice, the young lords organized a rally to honor their fallen friend.
All the membership came out dressed in black with a purple race, and I think that the image that was projected right there to the community was unity.
But it wasn't just the young lords that showed up. Ramos' death at the hands of a white officer had caught the attention of the Black Panthers and other like-minded activist groups. More than 2,000 Latinos, blacks, and whites marched together to Ramos' wake.
They brought people together from different gangs, elders in the community, Black mothers and Puerto Rican mothers and Mexican mothers descended on that neighborhood and understood their common cause.
This mass gathering of ordinary people of color in solidarity against police violence became a pivotal moment in civil rights history. So important, it was memorialized in the 2021 Academy Award-winning movie, Judas and the Black Messiah.
America's on fire right now.
Depicting the young lords and the Black Panthers standing together. In the wake of the tragedy, Cha-Cha formed an unshakable bond with Fred Hampton.
Black Panther Party, a lot of people say we're right. We used to be a self-defense organization that believes and teaches kids what's going on.
My dad and Fred Hampton were like brothers, and I think they really inspired each other because of their shared causes and their shared struggles.
Hampton invited the Young Lords to form a multiracial alliance with the Black Panthers and the Young Patriots, a group of impoverished white Appalachians led by 20-year-old William Vesperman. Together, they called themselves the Rainbow Coalition.
Well, I think it speaks to the brilliance of Fred Hampton and Cha-Cha Jiménez that they saw the importance of coalition building, and coming together around the murder of Manuel Ramos was also a way for the Black Panther Party to see the Young Lords as comrades, as people in the struggle with them. If they were going to build this movement, they needed to work with each other. That's the power of the Rainbow Coalition.
This multiracial organization was a first of its kind. A remarkable feat considering the youth of its leadership.
Most of them were teenagers and young men. I think for all of them to be kicked out of their homes and see people close to you being murdered in front of you. My father, in his words, he said, "How could you not fight?"
The Young Lords used every tactic in the organizers' playbook to grab attention and recruit activists. Flyers, a newspaper, cultural festivals, protests, meeting disruption, and one particularly risky but effective activity, takeovers. Presbyterian McCormick Theological Seminary was one of the oldest institutions in Lincoln Park. It would become the epicenter of a battle that pitted the seminary's plans for development against the needs of the poor community, and would ultimately put the Young Lords on the map as a force of change to be reckoned with.
According to a study that the seminarians themselves did, they found out that McCormick was really a small landmark in Lincoln Park.
On May 6, 1969, just 2 days after Manny Ramos' death, the Young Lords staged a protest during the dedication ceremony for the seminary's new $2 million administration building.
The United Presbyterian Church USA had mandated that its institutions direct and contribute 30% of their unrestricted funds to help poor communities. So this group is demanding that McCormick Seminary pay $601,000 for mixed income housing, for a Puerto Rican legal aid office, for a medical clinic, for resources for the Lincoln Park community.
So it was quite a calling on the church to act on what they said they are.
But the institution rejected every request. It was time for the Young Lords to take dramatic action.
And see, we're going to take this building over.
They said, "We'll just go in and occupy until they decide whether or not they're going to help us with housing." And they did.
It was the seminary students that provided Cha-Cha Jiménez and the Young Lords with the layout of the building. They gave them advice for when to execute the occupation, who will be in the building.
At midnight on May 15, 1969, the Young Lords stormed the building and chained the doors. morning, the young lords unfurled a banner declaring the occupied site the Manuel Ramos Memorial Building. Over the next few days and nights, more than 200 community members and activists showed up in support of the young lords. But seminary leaders were not interested in negotiating.
We will seek a court order compelling those occupying the stone building to remove themselves forthwith.
We heard that they were going to attack and take us out of the workforce, so we almost did to the library.
The seminaries, the library really holds a very valuable collection of antique biblical documents and books.
The young lords barricaded themselves in the library among priceless antiquities and forced their hand.
So we told them, if you bring in the police, we don't know what's going to happen in the library.
The tactic worked. On day 5, the seminary relented and agreed to give the young lords the $601,000 for low-income housing in Lincoln Park, plus $75,000 for cultural programs, health care, and a legal aid office.
This is not just the young lords saying, here's everything that's wrong with urban renewal. It was the young lords and their coalition stepping up and saying, here are the things that are wrong, and these are our solutions.
Now it went to the next level of seeing where community needs were not being met. Children going to school hungry, parents not having a place for their kids to be safe while they were at work, a lack of health resources. And the group started trying to meet those needs as best they could.
Flushed with seed money, the young lords needed a base of operations for their programs. So they looked to another Lincoln Park religious institution, the Armitage Avenue Methodist Church. Its pastor, Bruce Johnson, was a progressive church leader.
Bruce believed that the modern church needed to carry out the principles of the gospel. Feed the hungry, clothe the naked, provide housing.
Cha-Cha asked Johnson if the young lords could use the church to set up free social services for the neighborhood. Johnson supported the idea, as did many of his congregants. But the church's conservative Cuban members were not interested in communist ideology, and talks broke down.
One of our heroes was a Che Guevara, and these were Cubans that fled Fidel Castro, so there was no harmony between us, from the beginning.
Emboldened by the success of the seminary takeover and the revolutionary spirit of the times, on June 11, 1969, the young lords marched into the church and announced a takeover. This time, they were armed, prepared for battle with police.
I said there's going to be a bloodbath. There was weapons there. There's going to be a bloodbath. And so Reverend Bruce Johnson decided to tell the police that he had given us permission to be there.
We do not consider it a youth gang. We consider it a viable community organization. And as such, all community organizations with concern for the community at heart seek to organize the rest of the community around itself.
Did you ask the pastor of the church if you could use his church for this purpose?
We thought the pastor of the church is really in favor of this. He's a sympathizer. It's just the board members that not really have the board members are not really for us.
He helped us tremendously by counseling us out of the church and actually standing behind us.
I'm planning on taking over organizations in this area. With
a new ally in Pastor Johnson, the young lords set up community services at the newly renamed People's Church.
They had a huge banner in the front of the church that says Iglesia de la Gente, the Church of the People. And they organized and they used every space of that church to create a health clinic, a daycare center, and a food pantry.
The free healthcare clinic was a very radical project that had a lot of momentum more broadly through the movement, the push for community health clinics, not only here in Chicago, but throughout the country.
The idea of the breakfast program. That's really something that the was borrowed from the Black Panthers, okay? Because they were like the mother.
You've already been feeding some children here. How many have been showing up?
We've been feeding an average of 45 to 50 children each morning.
Carmen Flores Rance was 15 when she started volunteering with the Young Lord's Breakfast Program.
I would try to go there every day. Whatever I could do, I would help. The tables were full. They weren't serving breakfast in the public schools. These kids would go to school hungry. So when the word got out, the kids would go over there, eat, and go to school. It was made with love. And everybody chipped in, everybody helped out. And they began the child care center, which was urgently needed.
Well, we're starting opening up a daycare center for welfare mothers, ones that are on welfare that want to work, or just mothers that are on welfare not and want to work, something like that. So we take care of the children, we go on.
Everybody was a volunteer, and a lot of the women played a key role.
Rather than waiting on city government or the city of Chicago or federal government or some other outside entity to bring about public health resources, the Young Lords did it themselves. This is, I think, the magic of the summer of '69.
Throughout that summer, the Young Lords expanded their outreach and found favor in the community, but still couldn't escape their criminal pasts. By the fall, Cha-Cha was in jail again, this time for bond jumping. While there, news came that would shock the Young Lords organization to its core. On a Monday morning in September, a mailman arrived at the Lincoln Park apartment where Pastor Chruch lived with his wife Eugenia and their 3 small children.
The children were found in the morning by the mailman wandering right around the door, crying and covered in blood.
Reverend Johnson was stabbed 17 times, and the 2 little children opened the door for the mailman and told him, that their parents were asleep. They couldn't get up.
30-year-old Bruce and 31-year-old Eugenia Johnson have each been stabbed more than a dozen times.
He was such a gentle person, and so was his wife. There was a lot of rage involved in it, but it was really brutal. Whoever did it was very angry at them.
That was a very sad time for us.
The church was packed and thousands of people outside, and a funeral march of about 7,000 people, which indicated the support that Bruce and Eugenia had for their boldness and fearlessness in their actions supporting the Young Lords.
This remains a case that the perpetrators have never been brought to justice. I think at least in part, it was a sense of folks in the neighborhood that saw the Reverend Bruce and Jeannie Johnson as traitors, as people that took the side of the Puerto Ricans and the Mexicans and African Americans in the neighborhood over white Americans.
As they grieved, many Young Lords feared they'd be next, at the hands of unknown enemies, or even their own government.
As soon as the Young Lords became politicized, they became the object of police repression and of the FBI.
The FBI's counterintelligence program, a covert campaign to infiltrate and squash groups deemed subversive, targeted both the Black Panthers and the Young Lords.
The fact that they were able to ally with the Black Panthers, with the Young Patriots, to create this massive force of resistance is really important. It's what was the biggest threat to state power structures, to the forces that ultimately tried to really erase this history.
The FBI's counterintelligence tactics were abusive and growing increasingly aggressive towards activist groups. And Fred Hampton, the Rainbow Coalition founder and Black Panther leader, was right in the agency's crosshairs. In the early morning hours of December 4th, 1969, heavily armed police stormed Hampton's Chicago apartment and sprayed at least 90 bullets from submachine guns. Officers falsely claimed they were ambushed by the Black Panthers when executing a search warrant. 21-year-old Hampton was shot at point-blank range, along with 22-year-old Black Panther Mark Clark.
Good afternoon. The 20-year-old chairman of the Illinois Black Panther Party, Fred Hampton, was shot and killed in a pre-dawn shootout. The state's
The brutal assassination had a chilling effect on the young lords.
The first thing that came to my mind is where's Chacha?
When they killed Fred, it became like more real. They're killing us. They want to kill us. They want to kill us.
And they did it to Fred Hampton and a black movement that was stronger than the Puerto Rican movement. They could easily get rid of Church.
Government forces weren't the only possible threat to Chacha's life. He had struggled with addiction for years, and in the summer of 1970, was hooked on heroin. He wasn't the only one.
Chacha didn't struggle with addiction as well as I and a few others. Which was very, very sad thing to see.
Chacha would continue to wrestle with drug addiction before finally getting clean. But the ravages of drug use took their toll on more than his body.
Chacha's battle with heroin addiction, it undermined the movement. For those that had built up this figure as being the leader and the representative of a movement, it kind of alienated a lot of people.
Just 2 years after the Young Lords' inception, things had begun to fall apart. By late 1970, police harassment had reached a crescendo. Chacha had 18 pending cases against him. Charges included inciting mob action, disorderly conduct, and petty theft. After he stole $23 in lumber from an urban renewal site, police issued a warrant for his arrest.
We knew that the cases that he had pending, if he had shown up for court, he would have been doing a lot of time.
Chacha resigned as chairman of the organization and went underground. He lived off the grid on a farm in Wisconsin. And without their leader, the Young Lords drifted apart.
Our programs really suffered. So internally, the organization was crumbling.
One of the things that held the Young Lords back was their own gang roots. So while it's important that we credit the Young Lords for the remarkable things that they did, they also had limitations that shaped what they were able to accomplish.
After nearly 2 years in hiding, Chacha knew it was time to go home to surrender.
Chacha came and said, "Look, I don't want to do this anymore. I need to turn myself in, and can you take me to Chicago?" I said, "Well, God, Chacha, I don't want to do it. I don't want to turn you in." He says, "No, I want to do this right."
Chacha returned to Chicago in December 1972. He beat the trumped-up charges, but received the maximum sentence for petty theft for the lumber. 1 year at Cook County Jail. Upon release, Chacha returned to Lincoln Park and discovered the relentless pace of urban renewal had turned over the neighborhood. Little trace remained that a vibrant Puerto Rican community had ever been there.
They were right. They were going to be displaced from Lincoln Park by wealthy residents, and the lakeside was going to be turned into a predominantly white, wealthy space.
But Chacha Jiménez still had the fight in him. Rather than using guerrilla tactics, this time he took a different approach. In 1974, he announced a run for alderman of the 46th Ward in Chicago's uptown neighborhood, another area where Latinos were being displaced. The campaign marked a new form of activism.
resiliency of Chacha Jiménez and of others around that Rainbow Coalition. As much as the police wanted to kill it, as much as the FBI and those that were surveilling and wanted to defeat it, that it was too late. The legacy was there, the politics were there, the ideas were there, and those politics continued in a very, very real and significant way.
Ultimately, Chruch received 39% of the vote and lost to machine-backed Daily Democrat Chris Coleman in the 1975 election. But his political impact was yet to be realized. In 1983, Chruch helped deliver crucial Puerto Rican votes to elect Harold Washington as Chicago's first black mayor.
And he played a major role in that election. There was 100,000 people in June of 1983 at Humboldt Park, and I was the only one on stage representing the young lords and introducing the newly elected mayor.
The election of a minority mayor with the support of other minority leaders showed that what was once unthinkable was now achievable.
Chacha Jiménez became an unlikely leader of his community. He led with heart. He believed in the power and brilliance of his peers and helped them fight in their community for real revolutionary transformation.
The Young Lords organization 100% encouraged, inspired, influenced people's mentality around running for office, seeing it as something that's attainable and necessary for the progress of our people.
60 years after the founding of the Young Lords organization, in September 2023, a diverse group of activists and academics came together at DePaul University in service of reconciliation. Chacha Jiménez, now in his 70s, was there to witness the university's plans to acknowledge the displacement of the Puerto Rican community.
The pause gesture to give the city of Chicago and the Puerto Rican community the first historical marker. Honoring the origin of the movement is an epic example of institutional reconciliation, reparative history, and amongst the most essential gestures I've been able to witness in my time here.
The marker was placed at the same building the Young Lords occupied in protest in 1969, now part of DePaul's campus.
The historical marker is a tribute to the history of the Young Lords and the Puerto Rican community of Lincoln Park. This is a story about young people taking the reins of power to support their communities and meet their needs. It's very easy to feel like all the problems are bigger than you and you can't make a difference. And the heart of the story for me is, no, you absolutely can make a difference. Collaboration, solidarity across groups, and respect brought people together in a way that these young people were able to make change. And they're an exceptional example for young people today.
As it was in Lincoln Park 60 years ago, gentrification is an ongoing concern for Chicago's Puerto Ricans. But the Puerto Rican community is holding their ground in a neighborhood they have finally been able to lay claim to, Humboldt Park.
You have a strip of land called Paseo Boricua, which is hard to miss. You'll see nearly 60-foot tall Puerto Rican flags made of steel and iron, having literally these gigantic flags planted and saying, if you're going to move us, there's going to be a fight for it. We're not going to repeat what happened in Lincoln Park. They've learned a lot of lessons from that.
Every June, Paseo Boricua hosts Chicago's Puerto Rican Day Parade, part of a 3-day extravaganza showcasing this proud and vibrant community.
It's not just a big party with great food and great music, but it's a way to really intentionally engage the Puerto Rican community. You can't help but be proud of your Puerto Ricanness.
The legacy of the Young Lords, I think, is something that is very powerful. The Puerto Rican youth that we impact fact that we gave them like a springboard for them to continue, not with a feeling of being victims, but to be participants of the system that they have a right to enjoy.
My father would say, we're not done yet. We'll let you know when we're done. We're still going.
What the Young Lords did is actually create a way for people to engage in politics in a very significant way. It's a legacy that speaks to the making of a Latino political identity in the United States. And I think it's kind of cool that it was these kids from Lincoln Park that made it all happen.
Thank you, everybody, for sitting patiently. I really hope this gives you a better understanding of the Young Lords. Chruch's vision, his goals, the foundation he left, it set the foundation for what happened here in New York. What he decided to do in '68 really set the foundation for what happened here in his body in '69. And without him making that decision, an opportunity to speak really quick, and then after that we're going to give everybody a 5-minute break to stretch their legs.
Once again, thank you everyone for being here at the celebration of life. The one observation that I had about this documentary was that they kind of focused on Chruch's substance abuse. So it's more of a social analysis rather than a political analysis, not really talking about the conditions that exist in all of our communities that drive people to substance abuse of some kind. In addition to that, I think that, our generation, our slogan was, we did not go to Vietnam to fight the war, we fought the war here. And when you go to war, any kind of war, when you come back, you suffer from post-traumatic stress syndrome. So many of us, whether it was Chicago or New York, when the war was over, for whatever reason, if the organization imploded, if you went and did some other things, we all went into some forms of addiction, whether it was sexual, whether it was substance. Some people even in great jobs, with great jobs, any winner, would punch somebody in the face and would be barred for life from that particular industry. And I'm talking about somebody like Felipe Luciano. Pablo Guzman turned to alcoholism. Got to say that when he passed away about a year ago, he had already been over 35 years in sobriety. So they don't talk about some of these things that those of us that were there went through and felt, and really doesn't take away one bit for the contributions that someone like Judge Jiménez did. So we're going to break now for about 5 minutes, and
Before we break, as you guys can see, there's 2 altars here, one for the chairman, and also one for my brother, John Carlos Maldonado. He was a young lord in Cleveland, Ohio. He passed away about a year ago. This is the first one that we lost, so if you guys can just give me like a couple of 5 seconds of silence really quick, that everybody put their hands down and just show some respect to them. Thank you, everybody. Let's stretch these legs and get the blood flowing. receive the ceremony.
She's 6 years old.
Appreciate you.
Her name is Bella.
Any panel members, can you please assist us in getting people back to their seats? Thank you, thank you. Everybody at this time, please, we'd like you to make your way back to your seats so we can continue on the celebration of life for Chairman Cha-Cha.
She's such a good dog.
Oh, yes, she is. Puppy's still outside. Hi, how are you? It's nice to see you. Hi, Emma. If you just got here?
Just give everybody one more moment to get back to their seats.
I'm going to be leaving in 20 minutes. Take my number. Call me later.
Danny, are we all clear back there? We all clear? All right. My name is Ian Morales. I'm the National Minister of Defense for the New Era Young Lords. I just want to welcome everybody for coming to the celebration of life for our chairman, Cha-Cha, José Jiménez. Give me a minute. I'm going to read the obituary. José Cha-Cha Jiménez was born August 8th, 1948. He passed January 10th, 2025. Cha-Cha was our chairman and founder of the Young Lords organization in Chicago. He passed away on January 10th, 2025 at the age of 76. He was a pivotal figure in the civil rights and liberation movements in the U.S. Cha-Cha's legacy is defined by his revolutionary spirit, steadfast vision for Puerto Rican self-determination, and unwavering commitment for justice. Born on August 8, 1948, in Caguas, Puerto Rico, Cha-Cha moved with his family to Chicago in the 1950s. Discriminatory zoning and redlining uprooted Puerto Rican families, including his own, shaping his understanding of systematic injustice. Under Cha-Cha's leadership, the Young Lords transitioned from a gang to a human rights organization on September 23, 1968. They fought for Puerto Rican independence while addressing broader issues like gentrification, institutional racism, police brutality, the access for healthcare, education, and housing. We have hiccups. It's okay. The Young Lords organization launched free breakfast, education, and healthcare programs, and created community spaces like the People's Church and the People's Park. Inspired by the Black Panther Party, Cha-Cha emphasized political education as a tool for empowerment and mobilized Lincoln Park's Puerto Rican community.
In 1969, he co-founded the Rainbow Coalition with Fred Hampton of the Black Panther Party and William Preacher Man Vesperman of the Young Patriots. In 1974, he became the first Latino to announce a run for alderman in Chicago. Challenging Mayor Richard J. Daley's gentrification plans, he later helped form a Latino coalition. Lost my spot, sorry guys. The Coalition for heralded Washington's historic mayoral campaign in 1983, asserting Puerto Rican and Latino political power in the city. A lifetime learner, Cha-Cha earned his GED and later pursued higher education, completing a BA from Grand Valley State University, an AA in Business Administration, and an MA in Public Administration. He worked as a youth gang addiction counselor in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Cha-Cha also dedicated himself to preserving the Young Lord's legacy. He established archives at Grand Valley State University and DePaul University, ensuring the organization's history would inspire future generations. In 2024, a historical marker honoring the Young Lords was placed on DePaul's Lincoln Park campus. In 2023, he received a public intellectual award for DePaul Center for Latino Research during the Young Lords 55th anniversary ceremony. José Cha-Cha Jiménez is survived by his children, Jacqueline, Sonia, Melissa, Alejandro, and Jodette, and his sisters Jenny, Daisy, and Myrna. He was a proud grandfather and great-grandfather, and is also survived by numerous nieces, nephews, cousins, and extended members of the Jiménez family. A pioneering family that shaped Puerto Rican Chicago within the Lincoln Park community, he was preceded in death by his parents Eugenia and Antonio. Cha-Cha is remembered by countless friends, allies, colleagues, students, and activists across the globe who shared his vision for justice and liberation. His life remains on as a testament to the power of resilience, education, and revolutionary love. Rest in peace, Chairman Cha-Cha. So at this time, I'd like to bring up to the front Sam, who is the New York chairperson, and Mickey, who is our OG here from the party. They're going to continue on with the ceremony. Mickey, Sam.
Again, thank you everybody for joining. I'd like to invite Kyla Ruel to come up and do a performance to
Caribbeans are loud. All right. So also call and response because we're all so much more beautiful together. So let's call Cha-Cha's name into the space. So, Cha-Cha. Cha-Cha. Chairman. Cha-Cha. Young Lords. Cha-Cha. Freedom Rings. Cha-Cha. For you we sing. Cha-Cha. Eternal blessing. Cha-Cha. We heard your message. Cha-Cha. You are a lesson. Cha-Cha. We move for you. Cha-Cha. From the whole. Cha-Cha. Red Dr. King. Cha-Cha. And from the whole. Cha-Cha. Was crowned a king. Cha-Cha. Tremendous. Cha-Cha. United all. Cha-Cha. Rainbow coalitions. Cha-Cha. Will never fall. Cha-Cha. Up there with Fred.
Siempre presente, porque tú vives en tu gente, en todo los pueblo, al pie de lucha. You raised the vanguard along the Panthers, and for our rage, provided answers, breakfast programs, and clothing drives, tenant justice, human rights. We are deserving of so much more, and for your teachings, you rise above. The youth of Malcolm will never die. Youth of Albizu will stay alive. Go on, fly now, en libertad, porque en el pueblo siempre estará. Siempre pa'lante, siempre pa'lante, siempre pa'lante, siempre presente, siempre presente, en libertad, en libertad. En libertad. Yo quiero que mi Borinquen sea libre y soberana. Yo quiero que mi Borinquen sea libre y soberana, porque la estrella de mi bandera no cabe en la americana, porque la estrella de mi bandera no cabe en la americana. Que yo quiero que mi Borinquen sea libre y soberana. Yo quiero que mi Borinquen sea libre y soberana, porque la estrella de mi bandera no cabe en la americana, porque la estrella de mi bandera no cabe en la americana. We love you, Cha-Cha.
Our first speaker is no stranger to anyone in this church. He was the one and only chairman of the Young Lords. After he left the organization, there were no more chairmen of the Young Lords in New York City. Please help me in welcoming Felipe Luciano.
Can we get that stand? Where's that stand? Stand is right there. Yeah, no, I mean the microphone stand. Good afternoon, people. It is hard, not so hard, to imagine how this little germ of a movement 50 years ago resulted in so much impact in so many things. And this is a lesson to us. Whoever you touch, whoever you have an impact on, especially children, if you're giving them the right information, they will live with that for the rest of their lives. Teachers, preachers, whoever they are, remember that what you say has an enormous impact
on these children. I wish we had more children here. I'd like to see them running around all over the place. It is the children that we must focus on. Because what's happening now is they're being told that their history does not count. They're being told that being black and Latino does not count, that this nation was made by white people, for white people. I mean, it's crazy. And so they're going around thinking that their nappiness is bad, that their skin color is bad, that their beauty. Remember that we're doing this not for ourselves, we're doing this for the youth. Please remember that. And whenever you can, if you're sitting on a stoop or talking or passing a group of young boys who are, swagging, have a lot of love for them, because I was there once and I thought I was all of that. And it was older gangsters who told me, hey man, why don't you put some chill on that? And they sat me down and they weren't afraid. Right now, we're afraid of young people. And that's probably the reason they're acting out the way they are. They're afraid. I'm hoping that at some point, Panthers, Lords, old gangsters get together and go through every block and say, you're going to have 2 cops on every subway. We're going to have 4 guys in each corner. There will be no more shooting on this block. Pick a block. I don't care what it is. And y'all know who is strapped. Y'all know who the ones who got it. And tell them you can't do that. You can't just jump out and kill somebody because he owes you $300. That's crazy. First of all, from a drug point of view, that doesn't make any sense. Once you kill him, you ain't making no money anymore. It's crazy. The other day I heard about a guy on 149th Street, a young kid, that was killed by a mentally deficient man. Did you read about that? He just killed him. Mental illness is reality. It's a reality. And it's nothing to be afraid of. Most of us are not well. Y'all know that. So we have to really take time to look at what our young people are doing, because that's going to be the difference. I really believe that the revolution has to take place in the schools as well as in the political salons of our city. The schools. I grew up learning about the Holocaust. I grew up learning about the Revolutionary War before I even knew Black history. It's only later that I learned Black history. It's only later that I learned Puerto Rican history. And once you learn it and have it in your heart, first you have to have a severe love for Puerto Rico in your heart. I know we're here. We've been here for many, many years. My family's been in this barrio 100 years. But for some reason, my family instilled in me a love for that island that's beyond description. I don't understand it. Si yo no voy a Puerto Rico por lo menos 2 veces al año, I start twitching. And my son tells me, time for you to leave, Pop. I'm telling you, I get all nervous. I love Puerto Rico. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't love here. I do love El Barrio. I love all of the areas in New York. But there's something about that island. As soon as I get off the plane, I smell the jasmine, I smell the bushes, and I just want to stay there. And by the way, the new thing that's happening in Puerto Rico is a lot of people are going back. They're expatriates. I see it all the time on the internet. And they're going back with skills. Because it's one thing to go back to, retire, get your Social Security. But people are going back. There's plumbing, there's electricity, there are doctors. We don't have any doctors in Puerto Rico. Which is why a lot of elderly people are not going there. They have diabetes, they have all kinds of heart problems. Why go there if I can't be treated well? And by the way, going to Puerto Rico, going to a Puerto Rican hospital in emergency is a trip. It's ridiculous. Don't even try it. A few things. Now, this church is struggling. I'm trying to figure out a way to help it because I just don't want to throw pennies at it. This church is struggling. How do my mother says you should have been a minister. I said, Mommy, I'm a hypocrite. I'm too street to be a minister. But I'm beginning to wonder if I should pay a lot more attention to this place, Subi. Because it needs it. It needs it. Now, can you imagine me preaching? Shit. Though I graduated with a degree in theology over at Union Theological Seminary, there are a few things I'd like to talk to you about, and then I'm going to sit down. And by the way, after this, I've got to eat, because if I don't eat, I get weak, and I'm diabetic, and you know how that is. Leadership points for all of you. Why do I love Cha-Cha? Because humility and compassion do more to build organization than rhetoric. Humility and compassion do more to build organization than rhetoric. You can give all the phrases you want, you can run Marx and Engels down to, but if you don't have humility and you don't have compassion, you have a problem. One, remember that. Cha-Cha was the embodiment of that. Listen and watch. Some of us are listening. We hear the untold story, but hearing is only half the job. Listen as well. Listen to what they're saying. Watch their body language. Cha-Cha really understood that. And he had eyes that would embrace you. My sister's going to talk about that in a little while, Johanna. He had eyes that just would take you in. And he said, this guy's really listening to me. You'd be surprised at what a good listening thing can do for somebody who's really disturbed. Number 3, if you are the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room. If you think you got it all together and you know the answer, you're in the wrong room. I like to be with smart people. I like to be with people who can organize better than me, who can construct a table better than me. I want to be with people who have something that they're experts in and they're good at. Cha-Cha had that. And he had a way of organizing mothers, grandmothers. Let me tell you something, folks. If my mother had not believed in the revolution, I would have not followed it. Your mother has to understand what you're doing. I understand she doesn't go for you going out and all the parades, but mom has to understand por qué tú estás fuera. My mother tried to get me on 110th Street, 5th Avenue. My mother tried to get me out of the party. And I said, Mommy, it's not going to happen. I love you. But you can't beat me anymore. My mother was an abuser. Y'all know what I'm talking about. I'll beat the black off you. I said, Mommy, how is that possible? Oh, you got games, you got jokes, huh? ¿Y pa' qué fue eso? If there were child abuse laws, my mother would have been in for life. But what happens is I got used to violence, and so let me tell you something. If you beat your kids a lot, I'm not saying a little pat on the fanny is not important. Dust their pampers, as they say. But don't physically abuse your kids, man. And always praise them. Oh, that's wonderful. Oh, that ain't nothing, girl. Or girls coming to you and say, I want to be a doctor. Girl, you don't even know how to do math. Do not destroy your children's confidence, please. In the Puerto Rican community and in the Dominican community, we have a habit of class arrogance. If we work and others don't, esos son unos vagos. Do you know what their problems are? You don't know what they're going through. Why don't you sit with them and find out what their daily life struggles are? You'd be surprised at how much you can learn. The brother sitting with the wine bottle, talk to him. I'm not saying you have to sit there and go through all, but talk and find. That's how the young lords gain strength in this community. We talk to dope fiends, we talk to drug dealers, we talk to prostitutes, we talk to trans people, we talk to homosexuals. We didn't care. And we were able to grow a movement where none of us actually died. Not on these streets. Cha-Cha refused to let those little voices of doubt and insecurity keep him from his mission, building the YLO. There are times when I'm in my house by myself and right away those little voices, things I want to do. Has that happened to you? I know you want to do that. That's not going to happen. You're too old. You haven't read enough. You're not educated enough. Stop that. If you want to do a movie and you think you can do it, do it. Spike Lee did it. There are two sisters over there, Kimona sisters. They started with a little project. They told me, we want to do a movie. I said, well, do you have any money? They said, no. That movie has gained professional acceptance. Acceptance. It's beautiful. What is it called, Mommy? Millie and the Lords. I have a little cameo in it. but they are filmmakers. A film can change your life. Battle of Algiers changed mine. These kids haven't seen that yet. And by the way, you see those little kids there? Huh? What did you say? Have you shown it to them? They have to see that film, because that's the difference. Seeing Malcolm X with Denzel Washington, the discipline that those brothers had. They go to the police station and they say, we want to see so-and-so, and when they turn like, man, you say, wow. That's the kind of discipline our children need. That's how you build organization. It's important to take over whatever skill you have, that's your gift. Chacha would have told you that if he were here. Chacha's gift was listening, watching, and organizing, and he did it softly. He never, I can't remember him raising his voice. I'm going to end with this. He refused to hate or hold grudges. I know that's hard for people of color, because sometimes I just want to kick his ass. When I was at NBC, the guy, I was doing a story, and I had finished the story. I was known for being a fast editor. And he came in, and his name was Billy Boyce. He was the executive producer for, John Chancellor was the guy at the time. And he came in and said, give me your. I said, well, sir, I don't know who you are, first of all. But second of all, if you want this piece of film, we used to do film rather than videotape, why don't you speak to my superior, and then we'll do it that way. He said, excuse me, who the hell do you think you are? And he grabbed my hand. You think you're in the Young Lords? And I said, oh, this is a setup. You know, if he knows my background, and as soon as he grabbed my hand, he doesn't remember anything else. So I thought I was going to lose the job. So I go to my boss and I tell him, look, this guy, I'm giving him, here's my papers, here's all the stuff I have from the station. He said, before you leave, he said, did you hit him with your left hand or your right hand? I said, I hit him with my right hand. He said, when he fell, did he fall immediately or did he crumple? I said, he kind of crumpled. He said, did he hit the floor for real? I said, he hit the floor for real. He said, thank you very much. I've been wanting to beat that sucker for years. Be surprised where your allies lie. Cha-Cha refused to hate. And even after we left, remember this, folks, he refused to hate. And they went back to him, the Young Lords, and said, here's why we did this. He refused to say anything. I used to talk to him all the time and say, hey, man, it bees that way. I'm happy about the way you guys have grown. So don't get caught up in hate. I'm telling you, it hurts you. It's like a girlfriend that you love very much. She's gone. Your heart breaks. I don't know why people think men don't hurt. We go through it, and we want to kill the sucker. You see him on the street, you say, let me blow this boy away right now. It's not the answer. Hate can only jam you up. When I find a hateful revolutionary, I stay away from them. They're full of venom. They're full of pus. And I don't care if they use race as their motivation or anything else. They're full of pus. Stay away from them. I'm not saying that you're supposed to lie down and take it. And by the way, listen to me carefully. If we don't watch it as Puerto Ricans, as Latinos, they're going to take Puerto Rico. Let me tell you why. You were granted citizenship. It's not yours. You were granted it. Whatever they grant, they can take away. If they feel that they gave you something, they can take it away. Revolution may come in Puerto Rico not because we fought for it, but by default. Oh, ustedes quieren ser libres? Cógelo. Toma. What are we going to do then? Do any of us have farming skills? They could do that. They could do that. So I'm saying, be careful. I'm not saying be careful what you ask for. I believe in the independence of Puerto Rico all the way. I'd rather fight for it than it be given to me. But there are things that we have to watch in this country. We're going to go through 4 years of turbulent times. I want you not to lose faith. We've been through this before. Do not lose faith in your blackness, in your brownness, in your beauty. Don't lose faith. Because I'm telling you, hard times are coming. He said he was going to do something, and he's now picking up people in churches and schools. This is serious stuff, folks. God forbid that I see my kid being accosted by my father being accosted in a school or a church by someone. God forbid they don't come in here. That's basically it. When we came back to him, we asked forgiveness, he took it. Where is he? This man, I think God put him here for a reason. Yeah. I think God put him here for a reason. He may not have gone into the priesthood, but he was a priest. You'd be surprised at how many missionaries you have out here. And they're good people, and they didn't go to any theological school. So I say, folks, belief in your country, and by the way, please read Puerto Rican history, so that when they throw that stuff at you, you can say, no, you're wrong. That's not right. Learn about Dominican history, because we're going to have to organize with them. We have to set up unity things with them. Learn black history. A lot of us we talk about it, know the civil rights. You don't know what really happened there in Birmingham, Columbia, South Carolina. Learn it. Learn Jewish history. I know I was raised on Jewish history, so that's all I knew. But learn it so that when they talk about that, you can tell exactly what happened. Learn the history of anybody that you are neighbors with. I don't care if they're Italian, Chinese, or whatever. Learn the history, but especially learn yours. The worst thing to do is talk to people, no, que yo quiero esto. It has no history of what happened in 1898 and even before. If you understood what our country went through under the Spaniards, you'd be shocked. The reason they won is because they had iron and technology. I'm not going to go any further with that. The swords, they had steel. We didn't have that. I'll end with this poem. Wonder what would happen. What have I become? This dark thing with no mission, slithering down midnight streets in search of a mate, a memory, a mindless madness that lasts just long enough to feel hot and powerful for 5 minutes. This dark side has just enough light to show you your descent into nothingness. It rattles loudly and brays like an ass, but it has no direction. It has a visceral attraction because it lives for the moment, that snapshot fantasy you always wanted, but it's not art, and you know it. You can't show it to anyone. You can't teach with it. It was simply a fleeting piece of life you snatched in that hollow loneliness when you didn't want to look back or front or even sideways. And in the painful silence, the guilt rises like a tight metal band around the head. What have you done? What are you doing? And why are you choosing mediocrity? It's safe, it's slick, it's glossy, and people finally accept it as your final statement on the state of the world if you say it enough with a serious face. The fact is that while others may have opted to stick with it, frankly, I'm bored and unhappy and unhealthy and hungry to get back on track, in shape, able to smell the sun and smile at the camera because I want to. I'm hungry for wholesome things now. People who make you laugh and who smell naturally clean and think clean thoughts. Friends who push you through the curtain of pain and isolation, to reach into the shower to pull you out because enough is enough. Family that doesn't expect the supernatural and who understand the contradiction and who talk to you of private battles. Women who love the man and not the actor. The shedding process takes so long, I sometimes forget it's happening. God, I wish I could rip this persona off. But it's a part of me. I look forward to the future, I say publicly, but at night I call friends and tell them of private fears. Some say it to hurt and prove their access to me. Others bring it up to me when I'm strong again, just to pin me down. And some just hold it in and push me with their love and prayers to find the me I'm searching for. I need you, Lord, because in the end, it's you and me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. For our next speaker, we have a change to the program. In place of Manny, we have Reynaldo de Jesus, Minister of Defense for Ohio.
Muy buenas tardes a todos. Si Chacha tuvo un impacto en tu vida, dame un aplauso. Ese fue Chacha, él impactó muchas vidas, a muchas personas. Y muchos perdieron un amigo, ¿verdad? Pero ganamos un ilustre, una persona que va a estar allí al lado de Hosto, de Albizu. Ese es el impacto. Así tenemos que ser. Así tenemos que ayudar y así tenemos que adiestrar a nuestros niños. Enseñarles el ser orgulloso, el ser de ser de donde tú eres. Nosotros en Cleveland le damos las gracias de haber conocido muchas personas, muchos hermanos que nos enseñaron, que nos educaron y que nos dieron la oportunidad de caminar con todos ustedes. Algo muy bonito. Chacha, no sé, como un diamante que poco a poco se iba puliendo. Y voy a ser bien rapidito. Impactó la vida de muchas personas, incluso mi hermano Giancarlo, que está ahí, que junto con su papá lo inculcó, lo enseñó. Fue hasta los últimos rincones con nosotros, hasta Puerto Rico, en las montañas en San Lorenzo, a trabajar, a forjar ese puente de la diáspora que tenemos que seguir reforzando. Así que yo estoy temblando aquí, pero estoy temblando de alegría porque ese es mi mentor, ese es mi ilustre y va a estar en los libros, va a estar igual y grande como esas personas que nosotros veneramos. Con eso los dejo, mis hermanos. Dios te bendiga, Chacha.
Our next speaker is someone who many young lords in Chicago and New York trusted her with our history and our story. She wrote a book, and it's called Young Lords, A Radical History. Unfortunately, it came out during the COVID epidemic, so the tour was kind of limited. But she won 4 National History Awards, 1 local award, 5 altogether. She always makes me correct that. And rarely does a book get 2, and she took all 4 of them. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Johanna Fernandez.
Okay, I only have 10 minutes, but Lord Jesus. Okay, I want to talk about what Felipe was alluding to. There's so many stories of the young lords, and it's been the honor of my life to be entrusted with this history. So in June of 1969, some college dropouts, radicals in New York, some Puerto Rican, some black, read in the June 7th issue of the Black Panther paper an interview with Chacha Jiménez. And, you know, Chacha has transformed a gang into a revolutionary organization. So these guys are looking for an activist agenda here in New York, and they decide to hop on a car and go all the way to Chicago to meet Chacha and ask Chacha if they can start a chapter in New York City. And Chacha, former gang member, is like, sure, no problem. I don't know your ass from Adam, but yeah, we need a revolution. So you go on your merry way. A year later, the same snooty-ass college kids, dropouts, go back to Chicago, and they're like, you ain't shit in Chicago. And you guys aren't publishing the newspaper. We're leaving, and we're gonna take your name, and good luck. The members of the gang were ready to kick their asses, right? Pablo Guzman was gonna have his ass kicked from New York, because you don't do that. You don't disrespect like that. And the New York Young Lords had no idea what the Chicago Young Lords were dealing with. They were dealing with the FBI killing people in the street, like Fred Hampton, and the Chicago police. So when the Chicago Young Lords gang, the gang, was gonna kick their asses, Chacha was like, no. These are our comrades. These are our brothers and sisters. And they should go ahead and organize the Young Lords Party. Because if they grow, we grow. We're part of the same lineage. That's who Chacha Jiménez was. I would have kicked their asses. I met Chacha Jiménez in 2005. I was living in Pittsburgh as a postdoctoral fellow at Carnegie Mellon and traveling to Chicago, because it was not that far, to conduct research on the Chicago origins of the Young Lords organization. So I go to meet Chacha somewhere. I can't remember where. I was going to interview other Young Lords, but I wanted to interview him exclusively to get his life story before he joined the street organization, the Young Lords. But before I could count to 3, the Young Lords start marching in one by one, and with each Young Lord that walked in, I look at Chacha, suggesting with my eyes that this interview thing wasn't going to work out. And he said, they showed up to do the interview with me and keep me honest, to make sure I don't misremember shit in my favor. And then he started cracking up. Chacha had a wicked sense of humor. He also laughed at himself and his follies, and that made him so endearing as a human being. He was understated and low-key hilarious. So one of the many fond memories I have of Chacha is him showing up in Chicago. He was living in Grand Valley, Michigan, or in Grand Rapids at that time. And the Young Lords just gathering immediately around him, which is different from the New York Young Lords, by the way. The Young Lords are all fighting each other, and in Chicago, they might have their disagreements, but they're one. So everyone would immediately gather around him, and they would start telling stories about their time in the organization and cracking jokes, an enormous amount of sense of humor in Chicago. So Chacha was a people magnet. He brought the individuals around him together, and with that easy way he had about him, he signed them up to work collectively with each other toward liberation. As easygoing as Chacha was, he was equally relentless in pursuing the projects and struggles that he knew mattered most. And he was a long-distance revolutionary, plotting and planning some part of the struggle around the clock. David Rivera is here, and he can attest to that. His vision extended far beyond the present, ensuring the legacy of the Young Lords would endure for generations. He was the mastermind behind the Young Lords Archive at DePaul University and initiated the Young Lords in Lincoln Park Archive at Grand Valley State University while pursuing an undergraduate degree in liberal studies there. Through these efforts, Chacha cemented the Young Lords' place in history, preserving their story for future generations to learn from and be inspired by. Chacha cared as deeply about big organizational matters as he did about individuals. Every time we met, he never failed to bring up the brutal murders of Reverend Bruce and Jeannie Johnson, who had opened the doors of the Armitage Methodist Church to the Young Lords and allowed the organization to transform it into the People's Church. And by the way, without that church and that People's Church, without those struggles, there's no New York People's Church. We wouldn't be here today. Chacha passionately emphasized the need to launch an investigation into their killings, which we all strongly suspect were orchestrated by the FBI, the Chicago Police Department, and the Mafia, part of a broader effort to blame and discredit the Chicago Young Lords and undermine their revolutionary work. And as we know, Chacha was the driving force behind the transformation of the Young Lords from gang to revolutionary organization. Nothing I say, or any of us says, I think, tonight can really capture the brilliance, honesty, passion, and humility of Chacha Jiménez. I tried my best to capture his brilliance and the brilliance of the Chicago Young Lords in the first chapter of my book. And that is my favorite chapter, the Chicago chapter, which does not get a lot of attention. Chacha was a consummate political strategist. He had an exceptional ability to assess people's skills and talents and mobilize them to work for something larger than themselves. He was committed to self-transformation, and this was seen throughout his life. In prison in 1968, he read the autobiography of Malcolm X, among other books. He felt guilty about the petty crime he was involved in, requested to see a priest, and he felt called in that moment while immigrants were being rounded in with those engaged in rebellion to defend them. And that was the beginning of his radicalization and the beginning of him feeling called to fight for something larger than himself. Chacha was finishing a PhD at the time he got sick, and he was far into it. Chacha was so many things, but above all, he was profoundly human. And before I end, and I'm going to end in a minute, I want to thank the New Era Young Lords, the People's Church, and everyone who's here, Chacha's daughter, but David Rivera for being here and for pulling this together so quickly. Yeah, this is an incredible event. Chacha never hid his struggle with substance abuse and often referenced the language of the AA, the triggers of people, places, and things. And I'm so glad that Mickey really contextualized addiction of so many people who had been through the war of fighting against American empire domestically. Chacha was authentic and vulnerable, a rare thing for a leader. His beating heart, he left his beating heart on the ground all the time. And that's why he was so effective and so beloved. Chacha allowed himself to be seen in all of his complexities. He was profoundly compassionate. When you talk to Chacha, he was fully present. He was there with you. He was non-judgmental, and he made you feel truly seen. He was incredibly generous. And there's so much more to say about Chacha Jiménez. It really was the honor of my life to be able to write the story of his life and that of the Chicago Young Lords and the New York Young Lords. He is and will forever be my favorite Young Lord, and the favorite Young Lord of many people around the world and of the Young Lords themselves. We've lost a tremendous leader, rarely seen in history. José Chacha Jiménez, we love you. You gave voice to our rage, as was said earlier. You helped us understand our rage, and you've made us proud of being Latino, of being Puerto Rican, and of being human. And you showed us the route to fighting for a socialist transformation of society. José Chacha Jiménez, presente.
Next up, we have Charlene Reynoso, representing the New Era Young Lords Chicago chapter.
Good afternoon, everybody. Bendición to all of my respected elders, my brothers, sisters, and siblings in the New Era Young Lords, thank you so much for having me and allowing me the opportunity to speak today. My name is Charlene, and I come from Chicago chapter of the New Era Young Lords. And I came to speak on behalf of my chapter. My chapter had many personal experiences with Chairman Chacha, and many with his family, with his loved ones. I spoke with my deputy chairman in Chicago and asked him, I said, what do you want me to say on behalf of Chicago? How do you want me to honor Chairman Chacha? And the thing that we discussed is that there's so many people who Chairman Chacha meant so many different things to, so many personal experiences that he had with people. What I came to learn about Chairman Chacha was that he would call people, he would follow up with people. He'd say, how's your family doing? How's your kids? How's your mom been? It wasn't just the front-facing activist. A lot of the reach that he had to do with having genuine personal experiences with people. And I feel like that's a lot of the way in which in Chicago, and I can speak for myself, is how we approach our activism. It has a lot to do with caring for one another, caring for everyone that I know in this space, and loving and caring for the folks that are also in the space that I don't know. I know that I struggle with you, therefore I know that I love you. And that's something that I feel like we learned from Chairman Chacha. But like I said, everyone had different experiences with him. A lot of people have personal anecdotes. So when I spoke with our deputy chairman, he said, there's so many heartfelt things that people are saying and pouring their hearts out, and there's so many people that they could speak for hours and days and never be able to encompass their feelings about Chacha or their relationship with him or their understanding of him. He asked me to share with you our offering to Chairman José Chacha Jiménez and to his family as a chapter. We didn't write a long post or share so many words. What we had the honor of doing was standing watch at his wake and at his funeral. I stood on either side of his casket with my wife, who is also a New Era Young Lord, and we stood at attention, and that was our offering. That was our poetry. That was what we had to give and what we have to continue to give to honor Chairman's work and to honor his legacy is to continue working. I'm so grateful to be here, to see what is happening in the People's Church here. It is so inspiring, and it's something that an experience I'm going to take back with me to Chicago. But I thank you all for being here and being present and holding this space for the people. I just wanted to share with you that that's the way that we are going to continue to honor Chairman Chacha, is to do the work. And that's all we can ask, and to love each other. And that's all we can ask. Long live Chairman Chacha.
Okay, our next speaker is not Puerto Rican, although he is Latino. As the story goes, when he first arrived in this country, he was hanging out in the corner with some friends, some Puerto Rican friends, and then the cops came over and started beating them up. And the cops, as they were beating them up, said, you know, you're fucking Puerto Ricans, you're Puerto Ricans. And they come to him and he says, I'm Panamanian. And the cop says, I don't care what kind of Puerto Rican you are. Vicente Panama Alba, one of the original Young Lords here in New York.
I am.
I arrived this morning from Puerto Rico, and I did not come to mourn Cha-Cha. I came to celebrate Cha-Cha. I had the privilege of meeting Cha-Cha, of having the opportunity to spend time with Cha-Cha, discuss things with Cha-Cha, disagree with Cha-Cha, okay? And I met an exceptional human being. I had that privilege, a privilege that I hope all of you would have. He was someone who was driven by love for his people. He had the uncanny ability to see things, to strategize, and not to order people to do things, but to do things. And that's very important, because a leader has to lead by example, and that's what Cha-Cha led by. I want to celebrate and thank each and every one of you here today for having shown up to celebrate Cha-Cha's life. But the way that we must continue to celebrate Cha-Cha's life is by carrying on with the work that he led by example. It's not by talking about it, it's by doing it. And a lot has been said. I don't want to take much more of your time, but I want to say that Cha-Cha vive, que la lucha sigue, y que viva Puerto Rico libre, y que viva Palestina libre. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to have a moment for a performance again from VIPR. I'm going to introduce Jay, and then they're going to introduce their people.
Come. I want to thank everybody for coming out here to pay respect to the life of Cha-Cha Jiménez and the legacy of the Young Lords Party. You know, my organization, just for those who don't know, is named Victory in Puerto Rico, VIPR. Our three components is to defend Puerto Rico and defend Puerto Rican communities worldwide, to rebuild, restore, and respond on the island in times of need, and to reclaim our history and culture that has been deprived from us and stolen from us. Clap it up for that, yeah. Our organization has been inspired by the legacy of the Young Lords Party. We look to honor Cha-Cha through continuing the work that he started in Chicago, that blossomed into New York, and that continues to this day. He showed us what it is to defend our country and defend our community simultaneously, and I thank him for that. I want to introduce my vice president, Bombalu, for that. Many know him here, and then my brother, my member CF, they're going to do a performance piece in homage to Cha-Cha. So let's give him a round of applause.
What's up? My name is CF. I'm from Jersey City. Yo quiero mandarle un saludo al público aquí de Nueva York, los New Yorkers, que empezó muchas cosas aquí también, hip hop, which they try to front. I also want to give solidarity to my Dominican brothers and sisters. Ramon Betances is the father of the Puerto Rican nationhood. And currently, for those who don't know, ICE agents are running down in Santurce, Barrio Obrero right now and picking people out. So let's give love, because that's our brothers from wherever we at. My friend Bombalu, he's a legend, and we're going to do a quick Yuba. I hope that I could adapt this verse correctly. I just created it from watching this documentary for the great Cacique, Chacha Jiménez. Yo. Facha Jiménez, a representative, the leader relentless. We assert our power, keep the word, promise congregation, people's church. God's talking the flesh, proof, truth bombing. Honor the fallen like that dude, Brew Johnson. Modern day, over to Sono Guevara, Felipe Luciano, Paulo Guzman. Impossible, through many obstacles from Lincoln Party to Lincoln Hospital. In the fodder group, cause renewal. In the fodder group, in the fodder group, the urban renewal. Just another word for poor person's removal. Play bomba, they say we curse cause of voodoo. Resistance, polyrhythmic like Hurricane Hugo. Emancipate yourself and escape. Replace the soprano state with yuca against the junta like a juntas. Cause when you rely on the powers that be, you get Luma, La Cuna, Foundation, the Casa, the Cha-Cha, Hampton, Al-Qaeda, and La Raza. The father who made us come forth, the light to fight for the right. Cause we the young lords, make noise for yourselves. What's good? God bless all of y'all. My name is CF.
The next person to speak will be Mickey Melendez, co-founder of the New York chapter of the Young Lords.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd just like to quickly underscore something that Felipe was talking about, history. And one of the things that I've been saying is that you need to know your history, because if you know your history, no one can lie to you. And if you don't know your history, somebody else will define who you are. I'm just going to take a couple of minutes here because I don't want to be redundant. Real quickly, I met Cha-Cha in early 1969 as I was doing recruiting for the State University at Old Westbury. There were 75 of us. There were only 11 non-white people. We went to the administration and they opened up the possibilities for us to go and do recruiting. I went to Chicago and I had this organization, LADO, Latin American Defense Organization, where Obed Lopez was. And Obed Lopez is Omar Lopez's brother, who was predominantly featured in the documentary. He was eventually the National Minister of Information. So I go and I meet with Obed Lopez, and Obed Lopez says, well, hold on a moment, there's, somebody's coming here and I'll introduce you to him. So, time goes by, he says, oh, the guy's here, come in and, meet him. So it was this guy with a purple beret, un jabao, he was red hair and green eyes, and he says, this is Cha-Cha Jiménez. So I sit down with Cha-Cha and I tell him what, the whole story about Westbury and, want to increase non-white student body for the following year. And he says, wait a minute, there's somebody coming and I want to introduce you to him. A little time goes by and the student comes by and he says, I'd like you to meet this student. He's been involved in shutting down the high school in Chicago to rename the high school Roberto Clemente High School. So he introduces me to David Perez. I sit down with David right there. We do the application, and David Perez comes to New York, goes to Westbury, drops out with the rest of us, and becomes the Chicago member of the Young Lords of the Central Committee in New York. So that's basically my connection to Cha-Cha. So when we read the Black Panther paper, and we see the Cha-Cha interview and the formation of the Rainbow Coalition, we say, well, David, you know him, and I just met him, let's go and ask. And that's how the chapter in New York basically started. I just got a quick statement, and then I'd like to take my time to read what David Perez wrote. He's living in Chicago now, and sent a short statement, rather. So, about Cha-Cha. His simplicity and humility was his bravado. Others can present with great charisma and metaphors, but his was another way, a humble servant of the people.
And he got his message to generations, to a generation of us. Even it landed in New York. We're thankful that we had the opportunity to cross paths with you in this mystery called life. Grateful for your contribution to move our people forward towards dignity, independence, sovereignty, and self-determination here and in Puerto Rico. We are a better people because of your sacrifice. May your spirit be joined with the spirit of your good friend Hampton, and together continue to guide our ongoing work. Now, if I could find David. This is a statement from David Perez, former member of the Young Lords, New York. I would like to express my condolences to the family, friends, and comrades of Chacha Jiménez. We were 2 years apart in age. We met and started a journey in struggle and continued to share a commitment to human rights and social justice. I had the opportunity to visit the Young Lords in Lincoln Park area after my first baptism as a political activist and as one of the organizers of the students' walkouts high schools I attended. I was a member of the newly formed youth group affiliate with the Spanish Action Committee of Chicago. Our actions received community-wide support and some media attention. I am grateful for the time as a supporter of the Young Lords community campaigns against gentrification in Lincoln Park area and the protests against police brutality of our Puerto Rican community. It was an opportunity for my further education on the road to understanding the critical importance of revolutionary struggle, a struggle not only of our own people, but the current world we are experiencing and our active struggle for the better future of all humankind. I was introduced to the Little Red Book and more information about Puerto Rican struggle and independence, the national and international revolutionary struggles against colonialism. The reason I ended up in New York as a founder of the New York chapter was because of a recommendation by Chacha as a potential candidate for a scholarship at Old Westbury College. I am thankful for Chacha's presence in my life and all the brothers and sisters of my generation. We are children of a wave of Puerto Rican migration after World War II. We learned to thrive and prosper in the midst of oppression and reluctance and unjustified discrimination. We were challenged to be better and to do better for ourselves and our community. Our brother Chacha José Jiménez lived his life consistently and courageously, championing profound the slogan, serve and protect our people. Rest in power, Brother Chacha. Love always, and thank you for your service, David Perez. Thank you. So I met this gentleman about 55 years ago, where most of you, and I've said this before, where most of you were in a little box in heaven waiting to come down and join us. He was present when we went and asked Chacha to become the New York chapter. I'm glad that he wasn't present when we went to break with the chapter, because I'm not sure how he would have voted at that time. It's been a long journey. He was actually Chacha's oldest friend. This is the gentleman in the documentary that you see that he met Chacha when they were 5, 6 years old. He became Chacha's trusted person. He was like the ambassador of foreign affairs. The reason why he wasn't there when we went to break with the Chicago chapter was because he was in Cuba cutting sugarcane. Chacha had sent him to Cuba. When he comes back, Chacha then sends him to China for a couple of weeks. And he was considered the field marshal of the Young Lords, the national field marshal. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming David Rivera. Field Marshal David Rivera.
I'm nervous. I was good at doing my job, but I'm not really a speaker. So I got about 10 minutes to talk to you about 72 73 years of history. I met Chacha when I think it was the second day of being here from Chicago. We moved into the same building he lived. He lives upstairs. Through the years, we had a lot of fun as kids, did a lot of crazy things. They used to love talking about a roller coaster that we built, and we would go sell pop bottles so we can get the 2 pennies so we can go and ride on our own roller coaster. And that was our friendship. I was, 10 going on 11 when I became a young lord. And we went on when I was about 17, 18, then we became political. But let me tell you something about the young lords a little bit. We got together because we got tired of being beat up on the way to school, really. So we used to go to school together. We lived in the Lincoln Park neighborhood. There were 7 or 8 of us. Played baseball, and just like you saw in the documentary. When the things got serious into the political scene, I was against it because I told him I was no communist. But a lot of us really, we talk that word communist, but half of us really don't know the meaning of it. You know, it's just a word that they threw out there and said, that's bad, so let's not deal with it. Chacha and I became very, very close. He was the man that I would sit in a dark corner and talk about what was in his heart, his feelings, his emotions. And it's true what they say. He did have a sick sense of humor because he was one funny guy. Chacha and I got a chance to share things that many others didn't get to share together. So I'm very emotional about it. Chacha was a guy that he built a trust in me to where, for some reason or another, confided in me and things that he wouldn't confide to anybody else. If there was something important that needed to be done, he would come and call me and tell me. He would just simply put his hand on my forearm and say, David, take care of it. And I would. He sent me places around the world. I went to Cuba because he told me he needed for me to go to Cuba. He told me to go to China so that I could learn how the system worked. So he sent me to China and a few other places. That was my job in the Young Lords. I stayed behind the scenes a lot. I think you saw, I didn't know they had that many pictures of me. My God, the FBI must have had a party. But the thing was that we stood there. There were times where 10 years would go by and I wouldn't see Chacha. We would speak because I had to take time off my wife was terminally ill. So it got to the point where I had to bathe her, clothe her, and so on. So I took off for a while. Until 2015, 2016, he called me up and says, we have a project. I said, oh no. Yeah, I said, oh no. And that was right after my wife had passed. My wife passed in 17. So it was just about that time. And he told me that he wanted to rebuild the Young Lords. And I said, okay. So at that time, he told me that he wanted to take off. I'll give you a little bit of history here that nobody knows, because he wanted to go to school, get his master's and then his PhD. At that time, he made me the sitting chair. Okay, during this time, though, he was getting sick, and though he started to orientate me in things that that he only knew in the organization. Then he calls me up one day and says, David, there's some kid in Connecticut thinking he's a young lord and he's using our name. I need you to go out there and see what the hell is going, because this ain't going to happen again. So I said, okay, Chacha. I got a hold of Subi through Messenger. This is National Field Marshal David Rivera of the Young Lords Organization, and we need to speak. Send me your phone number. You know, he did, and we spoke. I was very apprehensive, but I was there speaking to him for about 15 minutes. There was something that clicked in me. I liked the kid. I liked him. I spoke with Chacha. Chacha says, okay. I introduced him to Chacha over the telephone. Chacha spoke to him. We spoke for about 3 days as we talked about the emblem and all that stuff, the YL, the YLO, the YLOP, everything. Because there's one thing that Chacha, and I believe it was either the last or next to the last conversation that he had with Subi, and he said, there's one thing I want you to do for me. Bring them together. The Young Lords are one. Bring them together. And I'll tell you what, today seeing my comrades, I remember Mickey when he came over to Chicago. I remember meeting Panama when I came down here, and a few others. As a matter of fact, this church, second time I've been here. The first time was a couple of days after they took it over. We bought a group for backup. And then today. But today I'm not here to say goodbye. It's, I lost a great friend. A great friend. I can't express my personal feelings of everything that man and I went through together. But I am glad to see one thing today here in this church. And that is that the Young Lords, whether YLOP, YLO, or New Era, which by chance, ladies and gentlemen, New Era are the Young Lords. They just like calling themselves New Era. They are the Young Lords. And I'll tell you something, what kind of man Chacha was. There's a picture where it shows that he's putting the medallion around Rusubi's head. And let me tell you what happened at that moment. I was standing next to the wheelchair. Chacha was pushed over by the wheelchair. Subi comes over, and he bends down so that Chacha can put the medallion on him. Chacha tells Subi, no, don't bow down. Don't bow down to no one, not even me. I'll stand for you. And he stood and put the medallion on Subi's neck. So if anybody ever had any doubts, and I'm telling you, they are the Young Lords, we are the Young Lords, whether from New York, Chicago, Ohio, or anywhere else. We are the Young Lords, an organization that he built. I'm pretty soon going to follow in his footsteps, but these young people are going to carry our legacy into the next century. Because the Young Lords will not die. We will not, our roller coaster ups and downs, whatever the challenge, we will be here to meet it. God bless Chacha. Chacha, I love you, bro. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I have tears rolling down my eyes. Our last speaker is Subi Toro, the national chairman of the New Era Young Lords.
Yo, you said you couldn't speak. You got me over here crying, and now I got to follow that up? Jesus. Man. Oh, man, there's so much to say and not enough time. I just want to touch on what David said a little bit. And something what Joanna said and what Felipe said. When I started, my journey has not been easy. The name comes with a lot of benefits, but it comes with a lot of baggage. I don't think any of you guys understand how much baggage the name carries anywhere. So it's not easy. And what Joanna said earlier, New York has an arrogance with them. And I'm born and raised in New York City, so I understand the temperature and I understand how people function here. But the ones who gave me the hardest time doing what I'm doing was New York. As much as I love the elders and I embraced them, when I started what I started, New York did not want to reopen this door. They didn't want to relive the traumas. They didn't want to go through the headaches. They did not want to visit this again. The door was closed. The chapter was closed. And I understood that. I never really took it personal. It sucks, you know. People you admire, you want their approval. You want them to like you. You want them to give you the okay. And I didn't get it. I didn't. The one who gave me the okay was Cha-Cha. Cha-Cha, he reached out to David. He called me. Well, he spoke to David. And what David didn't say is when I got on the phone with Cha-Cha, I couldn't even speak. It was like talking to my superhero for a minute. He laughed. He laughed on the phone, and he said, "Yo, cálmate, mijo, it'll be all right. Just get your words together." And it was a humility, but something that I embraced because I was really seeing someone who I really hold to a high standard. And for him to take the opportunity to have a conversation with me, I couldn't ask for nothing else. And I got to give Cha-Cha that. It's not easy for him to pass it on to New York, but it wasn't easy also for him to pass it down to me. He was very skeptical of everything we were doing. He understood, in my belief, that his time was limited. And I think that's what made him focus on us a little bit because we were doing the work. You know, we wasn't looking for the political battles or the political fights. That comes when you do the work in the community. Every time a door gets closed on you, that's the moment to fight. It's not to go out there being a bully and be a tough guy and everybody want to be the super revolutionary. That's not how it works. They know. There was so many actions done before they had to go to the radical length. And I have to give Cha-Cha his flowers. Like I said earlier, without him, there would be no New York Young Lords. There would be a lot of these activist groups, Latino activist groups, probably wouldn't even exist without Cha-Cha. And for him giving me this opportunity and this chance to be able to bring his legacy back to life, his greatest accomplishments is not what they did in the 60s and 70s. His greatest accomplishment to me is the legacy that carries on. Not with just in me, but with everybody that picks up and stands up for their people. You don't have to be a young lord to continue carrying the legacy of Cha-Cha. All you have to do is love your people. The greatest gift Cha-Cha gave me was David. I say this all the time. I hold Cha-Cha in so much high regard. When he put David on me and he assigned David to me, David hasn't left my side since I started. Conversations, 10 hours a day, and I know he's an old guy, so imagine being on the phone for 10 hours. That's a long time, you know? But the bond, the compassion. I really thank Cha-Cha for bringing this man into my life. Because I met him in my most darkest moment. My depression went at its high. His depression went at its high. I lost my father. He lost his wife. We mourned together. 50 years apart, but we mourned together. We bonded together. And I wouldn't have David if it wasn't for Cha-Cha. And that's what I have to tell Cha-Cha, thank you. The gifts that you've given me to be able to give to the people, I couldn't appreciate it anymore. I don't really want to go too much on a rant. I do have something I want to share, but just give me a second to get myself together, and I got you guys. A year ago, Mickey gifted me a book. Pedro Petri's, collection of Pedro Petri's, and you know Mickey, he folded a couple of pages, he made sure he got poems that he wants you to read, and I didn't write, I never wrote poetry in my life, but when he gave me the book, I was on my way to Puerto Rico to the Back to Borinquen project that we do every 6 to 8 months, building the bridges with La Isla and the diaspora, And I wrote a response to the legendary Pedro Petri's Puerto Rican obituary. And I'm gonna try to get it out. Haven't performed it yet, so bear with me. Hold up, what's going on? We've let too much time pass. It's been going on for far too long, struggling just to survive. Things seem so wrong. We worked, we were always on time. We were never late, just trying to survive. If it wasn't for Juan, Miguel, Milagro, Manuel, Olga, I would still be in denial. All dying for an American dream, waiting for their lottery numbers to hit, the supervisor to die, and the promotion that never came. So understand and learning everything they struggle through, why do we continue to keep the cycle going? While screaming, yo soy boricua, pa que tú lo sepa. Please tell me, what good does that do if we continue to contribute to the system that has us where we're at? And I'm not saying you have to be the next Captain Puerto Rico. I'm not saying all that. But let's look at the facts. So from 1493 to 1898, Spain ruled the island of Borinquen. And with that time, we had massive genocide. So many people died on both sides. And what do I mean by both sides? Our Afro and Taino side that we can never deny because we hold with so much pride everything they struggled through just to survive, while the conquistadors took the whole island on a ride, committing so many criminal acts that words can never describe. Here comes 1898, big old Tío Sam, el savior de Puerto Rico, decreasing the currency by 40%. Because who needs to survive when you got Tío Sam's checks by your side? Can't forget about the imposement of citizenship, forcing us to rely, while Tío Sam takes a ride on the road of taxation without representation, which comes with a lot of exploitation. Oh, what a great nation of which we reside. But what I realize is if you remove us from history, we don't see a future. This is why it's important to understand who is Pedro Arvizu Campo, who is Ramon Emeterio Betances, who is Lolita Lebron, who is Mariana Bracetti, who are the Puerto Rican Nationalist Party, who are the Young Lords, all representation of greatness, all in their own right. But we are them and they are us, standing for the same cause, self-determination, liberation, with no limitations. So we won't be dying, hating the maple leaf steaks or the bulletproof rice and beans, or waiting for the lottery numbers to hit or the supervisor to die to get that promotion. We will be dying, freeing our bodies without having to use physical strength, but by arming ourselves with knowledge and power, not just for now, but for the future. Viva Puerto Rico libre, pa'lante, siempre pa'lante. We have one more performance to go, or Charlie? Thank you guys again.
Thank you, everybody. That's the end of our speakers. I'm going to invite Shar to come up and start the candle lighting ceremony. Everybody take a moment. I think the candlelight ceremony will be across the street, so go ahead and bundle up.
Thank you. I was given the honor and pleasure of being able to set up an active altar in remembrance of our chairman, José Chacha Jiménez. We're going to take these candles over, and then there's going to be some candles in the back, and we're also going to take some candles over across the street. So if everyone wants to start heading out that way, we'll take them over and we'll say a short prayer outside, and we'll light our candles to uplift his spirit, okay? Thank you.